there's really tremendous different dimensions happen across these 6-year cycles, and real adjustments of one's perspective and one's guidance. And out of all the guidances of human beings on the planet, the prize is to have the wisdom and the clarity and the good understanding. The reality is most people have problems and complications and abuses and fights and accidents and cuts and bruises and burns and competitions and disruptions and rejections, and are trying to understand, how come me? It didn't happen to my friend. How come they got this and I didn't? How come we won the championship and they didn't? Or how come we didn't, they did? Wow. So I remember for me, by the time we're getting to graduate, it's a bit before this, but on the week before graduation, my girlfriend of 2 years, I found her in the arms of my best friend, who'd been my best friend for 5-6 years. And I lost my best friend and my girlfriend, and I had a really impaired attitude in going on. So a lot of different things happened. I did get to university, although my parents didn't have the money. I got a scholarship to get in, but they split up, and then I had no home, and it was very difficult. I only got through 2 years before I left. So I'm way on my own in this phase, and I had to figure out where I was going, and I took off to travel. Very Jupiterian thing. Many different stories. Everyone differentiates it based on their Martian experiences and what they can accomplish, and this is the wisdom guiding between it. This is so, Jupiter's so amazing to see. It makes things click together. It really is. Saturn's the backbone and the anchor, but Jupiter's the glue or the wisdom that gives you the perspective of what's happened in a person's life. How far did they go this way or that way? You can see difficulties in a chart, but you can't tell if someone has those difficulties going to be right or wrong. You can see strengths and vulnerabilities. You don't know if that vulnerability is going to make a person wiser or less wise, right or wrong. That you have to observe by how someone's living. And if someone's in trouble, consultation is, how do you help them get more responsibility, get their backbone and direct their energy so they're not getting as much trouble. You know, it's, if someone's not in trouble, you think, how far can you, what else can you do? Where do you go? What's next? So there's a big gap between the really successful and the really poor. People living on the streets and people who have rich places that usually are controlled environments, isolated places, gated communities, so poor people can't get into it. So life does polarize, but it extends out. But still, and Mars going through these yearly cycles will change, and your options of what you're going to do are going to change. So your attitude from 18 to 21 and 21 to 24, wow, it's completing. It's how you're completing the 12 to 18, how you finished high school and what you did for the 6 years after. I went for further schooling. I didn't want to get a job. I went to work for you. Then I went back to college. Then I went to this. Or I had a kid. I got married. Or had a kid, didn't get married. Or whatever. Like, so many things can happen. So yeah, at 24, it really is one of the luckier years of life, because it's a year when you're an adult and you're ready to expand. You're ready to start business. You're ready to have a family. Ready to do things. It really is a kind of lucky year, 24, a beginning year. A new understanding clicks in based on where you came from, on what's right, what's wrong, where you fit in, where you don't fit in. So, yeah, so this is more of a social extension, often what you're doing in business or not, but a lot of people will get pregnant at 24. Some people get pregnant early, anywhere along this phase. But 24, you kind of see where you are. If you're 24 and you haven't had a kid, oh, are you working towards it or not? You know, or if you've made commitments, like you met someone, you got married, you had a kid, he's got a job, you got the commitments, everything's in place by 24. Wow, what am I doing next? Where we're going next? You don't want to be locked in the, you're trying to understand what's next, what else to expand, who you know, where you're going. And halfway through, from 24 to 30, you're starting your social extension. I call it social extension for want of a better word. But you're extending your home, your family. You probably have your kids. You've come out of your home. You're going through the second cycle. You're starting the third cycle. You have your own kids, or not, and you're trying to see what you're going to do, or what you're going to, who you know, who you don't know, what you're doing in bed. Now, from once you leave school, whether it's at 18, 21, 24, once you leave school, while you're in school, you're buffered. You have all kinds of people around you. You have a whole social network and everything around you, for better or for good or bad, gangs, bullies, friends, whatever. But it's full, all kinds of examples of different people. By the time you get to 24, you're on your own. You got either your little family and a few friends, or you got your home place and where do you go to meet friends? Where do you go to spend? You hang at the bar, you hang out here, you go, like, you're much more in control of trying, let's see who your friends, what you're doing. You know, sports is not necessarily such a big thing. It can be, but I mean, you could say we grow out of different phases. This is more the interactive social business, seeing what kind of business, what kind of deals we do, what can I do, how can I change the work? If you're just driving a cab, but you got a degree, you got your degree, but you didn't get a job and you're just driving a cab, how are you going to change it? And based on what you're doing and understanding, who are you going to meet? If you're involved in drugs or you're an alcoholic or something at 24 and you're looking at going forward, you're not a good influence that's going to be good for other people to meet. Wow. Those are hard understandings to get. Bad habits, bad actions, good actions. All of these things affect your understanding and your comprehension and your social situation and your assimilation of experience and your integration into society and into the world. So you get through this 24 to 30. Well, just before, from 27 to 30, you get your Saturn, you get your lunar return, progressive lunar return, and your Saturn return. You have things, the Saturn return coming in. So this is like a death rebirth at 30. Is the big change. You had the Saturn return and Jupiter's at its opposition. So this is caved in, and so you start an understanding at the conjunction, you adjust it at the opposition, and you complete it, and you're trying to start a new one at the conjunction again. So at 30, you're having to understand and see where you got to. So many kids by 30, you have to realize you're not 20 anymore. You're not 18 anymore. You're not 24 anymore. Like, you're having to take a jump into the world. If someone hasn't, like with Saturn return, if you haven't left home by the time you're 30, when would you? If you haven't made love by the time you're 30, it's a big jump. If you haven't found some work you want to do, if you haven't made some commitment by the time you're 30, you're in a very different world than people have made commitments. Some people might have 2 or 3 kids and be locked in and say, oh, that's Saturn. A lot of rock stars they see themselves as young and never growing up, and a lot of people die and overdose and do things before they're 30. Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, just names go on and on and on. But getting past 30, that's one Saturn cycle. That's the first cycle of maturity. So that's really your whole growing up phase. 2.5 Jupiter cycles to get to 30, 2.5 to get to 60. So 30, 60, 90, the big turning point, the biggest phases in our lives. But from 30, depending how the Saturn return and the Jupiter opposition happen, and what your understanding or your attitude is, or now along this line, you can have mentors that are guiding you that you're listening to, or you may be guiding other people, and you may be guiding them well or guiding them not, or you may be guided well or guided wrong. You may be hanging out with a right crowd, with a wrong crowd, a bar crowd, whatever. And there's a trend. I say, could there be more? Is this all there is? Where do I go? By the time you're 30, if you're single, if you're a woman, most of your friends, your girlfriends, will probably be married and have 1 or 2 kids by then and a home, and you're sitting there and you haven't got it. What's happening? So a different voice comes in from comparing and seeing things, and this understanding of that. What am I going to do? And you adjust the understanding. As soon as you adjust your understanding of these turning points, it's going to affect. You're going to try and apply it for the next 3, 6 years, and you'll apply it successfully or poorly, depending on how well it's evolved. So there's some really successful business people, have their families, their business, everybody's really working well, and they still can have problems with their kids or with other things, and they may not know how to retire. They may not have. And again, if someone develops their spiritual side inside of this versus just the material side, it's totally different lifestyles, totally different understandings. So it becomes very diversified for each person. So it's like this one point at 0 starts from the Jupiter in your natal chart. And this process evolves from that. But your Jupiter in your natal chart, everybody's is pretty unique, and different aspects, different signs, different sub-signs, different things. There's so many unique things you bring to your Jupiter cycle. When you start looking at your own life and you mark these off and you see these years, they stand out. You go, oh, you can see these groupings. Oh, look at that toy. Look at that. Look at these 6-year plans. It becomes vividly clear. So, okay, let's get to the next one here. Yeah, when I did the Saturn cycle, I went around the first one very extensively. I didn't really go through I must have the 30 to 60 and going through when you finish growing up and you're going into your communal world and you're having to learn as the parent or going into society. Yeah, I had to do that. Okay, so Saturn to Saturn return opposition to Saturn return at 60. But here we have out of midlife from 36 to 48 is our midlife phase, and 36 to 42 we're seeing who we know. Like if you're a woman or a man, you haven't had a kid by 36, do you think maybe you'll never will you have it, or will anybody do it? What do you do? What, so our understanding of our sexuality, Jupiter to Mars, is tied into this understanding with our actions, our work, or with the things we're doing. Mars is a huge thing with so many things we can do. Saturn is the limits of what we actually have accomplished or done with all the things we've been doing. Jupiter is the understanding. Did we just party or play around or go around? Did we wake up to what we needed to? Did we mature? Did our understanding mature? Well, for most women, guys look immature. You know, they act like 2-year-olds and they look stupid. So most women think guys aren't very mature. And it's different at different ages. But yet a lot of guys are out in the world thinking they're accomplishing, they're carrying the fact the woman's at home and it should be this way, should be that. These are different understandings that right or wrong, they're going to be challenged by life. And by your own karma and and what you put out comes back. That's one understanding. If you put out, it's going to come back. Is it not going to back? Is there another lifetime? Is there not? These are all Jupiter factors that gain perspective. It depends what you've run into Mars, who you've met. So this running into from 36 to 48 usually is tied up to career, family, what you build up. You're running around doing everything that needs to be done. But by 42, you got your Saturn, like 42 to 45, you have Saturn opposition come in to itself. There's a midlife puberty or reassessment, but there's an understanding of what I've been living all this way. Do I keep going the same way, or do I have to go this way? Promotions are coming. Do I go this way, or do I have to change the way I'm living? And always this puzzle at any time of the Jupiter cycle, but this one is specifically. There's a couple of good books talking about just time and ages. Passages was one that went through what happens at different ages of life. And if you read this, you're going to see your Saturn cycle working. You're going to see the Jupiter cycle inside of it. There's another one by Esther Harding. I'm not sure if it's called The Way of Women or what it's called, but it really did a really good example, very traditional example. She's a Jungian of working through the phases of maturity. She's a very Saturn type person, and her writing was more Saturnine. So it was admired in the 50s and 60s, but as we got into the 80s and 90s, people thought, oh, that's too strict. And other people more liberal came to the fore. But they're two good authors that stimulate seeing phases and times. Any baby book goes through what's happening at phases and times in our life, what to do at different stages, at different ages. And